Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2007 sports comedy, The Comebacks. Now, normally I tend to have fun with these kind of football sports comedies. I like Necessary Roughness. I really enjoy The Replacements. I like lesser known gems in that genre, like The Best of Times. I enjoyed the Longest Yard remake with Adam Sandler. I like Little Giants. So there are a lot of these kind of films that I really enjoy and have fun with. So I did have some hope for this one, but at the end of the day, I thought this was pretty bad. Like, not completely awful and unfunny in every single scene bad, but still pretty bad. I mean, this was more on the same level of quality as your average episode of that forgotten TV show First and 10 that used to air on HBO in the 80s. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the comebacks, I would like to give a special shout out to Brock for requesting yet another review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Comebacks is directed by Tom Brady. And no, not the Tom Brady you're thinking of. It's not the New England Patriots, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame quarterback. It's the guy who directed The Hot Chick. Now, that would have been interesting if the other Tom Brady directed this, but no, it's the guy who directed The Hot Chick and Bucky Larson. I would say out of all of the 3 films that he's done, this is probably his best, but that's not really saying a lot. And I would probably say it's his best work as a director out of all 3 of those, but again, that's not saying much because it's still very firmly below average. It really does show when it comes to the football scenes, they don't have that kind of energy that you're looking for out of football sequences. They are just flat and boring and don't have that crunch to them when it comes to the hits, or don't have the thrills that come with the jukes and the acrobatic catches and all of the stuff that comes from watching football. It's honestly kind of amazing how all the football scenes in this are just so dull and boring. Like, there's nothing about these football scenes that are really that exciting or fun to watch, other than maybe some sight gag. But other than that, like, everything about these football scenes is very generic, very played out, been there, done that. Or what you do get is just lacking pretty much everything that makes football such an exciting sport to watch. It seemed like he put more energy into random dream sequences where everybody is all of a sudden dreaming like they're in a band singing "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, you know? Like, because all the football scenes don't have the same energy. Now, and I think a lot of that has to do with Tom Brady and his skills as a director. He's not that skilled of a director. So you have him trying to do these scenes that are supposed to be exciting and visually thrilling, and you don't get any of that. Like, say whatever you want about something like the Longest Yard remake or the Replacements or even the Best of Times with Robin Williams and Kurt Russell. Like, the direction when it comes to the football scenes is really good. Like, it actually does a good job putting you uh, in the shoes of the players on the field. It's fun and it's also thrilling and it's everything that you want out of a football movie and everything you want out of football. And instead, you just get ball, or you just get ball. By balls, I mean Tom Brady's left nutsack. That's what you get for the most part when it comes to these football scenes. You get all ball. And the parody bits that are, like, parodying other sports films like Rocky or Invincible or Radio, they are on par with any of the other shit you'd see in the worst scary movie sequel or disaster movie or epic movie or any of those movies. Uh, and yeah, the direction is definitely not very good, but it's not completely, absolutely horrendous either. There's some moments of the comedy variety that are kind of spirited and zany and kind of fun in their own way. Uh, the moments when he's being more over the top, that's when the energy is a little bit higher, and that's when the direction as a whole is better in terms of the camera angles and perspectives and pans, zooms, and different sort of angles and other stuff that involve the camera work. But when it's just trying to be, I don't know, like dramatic, it's bad. When it's trying to be focusing solely on the sports, it's bad. Um, and even when it comes to some of the other comedic moments where it's like really on the nose in terms of the comedy, it's also pretty bad. So yeah, not the best direction. I really don't think this is championship quality directing by Tom Brady. Now, the screenplay by Ed Yeager and Joey Gutierrez. This isn't winning material either. There are some stuff involving David Koechner's character, Coach Lambeau Fields, and him being the worst coach ever. And they show him blowing all of these what were at the time well-known sports events. Like he's the one that caused Bill Buckner to lose the ball in between his legs at the World Series. He's the one that caused a big car wreck at one of the NASCAR races. He's the one that cost all these different people all these different titles because he's a dumbass at like the worst possible point. Like he's somehow a good enough coach to get his team to the championship, but every time they make it there, he chokes. So you kind of feel for him in some ways because you definitely see that he's actually not that bad of a coach, but he just happens to have a serious case of choking at the worst possible time. And the script does an all right job in terms of providing an avenue for him to come out of retirement. A friend of his, at least who, a friend that you initially think is there to help Lambeau, named Freddie, he shows up and he tells him about an opening at this college in the middle of nowhere, and they need a coach for their football team, and their football team is called the Comebacks. And there's even like narration from his friend who narrates the coach's life and the events of the film up to a certain point. And I thought that was definitely one of the more clever bits in the script, is that you had this narrator who is narrating the film in, you know, the kind of typical sort of way you'd expect out of a sports film. But then after a certain point, when it's revealed that the friend isn't a friend at all and he just set the coach up to fail, he then is no longer narrating anymore. Like I felt that that was pretty clever, and I definitely have to give the writer, you know, the writers a lot of credit for that one, because that was one of the funnier bits in the script. And so was honestly anything dealing with Freddie Wiseman's character. Like he was pretty funny. He definitely had some of the more humorous, more witty moments in the screenplay. But a lot of the stuff with the other characters, the other football players, like the one guy who's just selfish and vain and thinks he's number one, and even has like a sign that says that, and wears a chain that says number one, and he's just selfish and not a team player. A guy whose literal name is Asil Terre, who has his name mispronounced by the coach in ACL tear over and over again. And that's supposed to be comedy gold because he's like, ACL tear, get in there. Go ACL tear, like go. And then, of course, he predictably tears his ACL. Like, you're like, come on, man, that's just dumb. And the random points in the script where you just have a sports parody just out of nowhere. His assistant coach is radio and a pretty offensive a stereotype of mentally challenged people. To the point where he's like humping coach's leg at one point. Um, I bet Michael Bay thought that this was the funniest movie ever as soon as that scene popped up. You have this quarterback whose father is the one that I was talking about, who is doing drag, and he's disapproving of his son because he always drops the ball because he has a fumbling problem. And Lance Truman, you have Lambeau Fields' daughter, who is in a lot of ways a slut and a troublemaker, and she winds up falling in love with Lance, but before that, she was involved in a relationship with Trotter, the wide receiver, the cocky wide receiver, and she's got daddy issues. You got the coach's wife who's really unhappy with the coach because he's too focused on his job. Like a lot of stuff that you're just like you've just seen done a bunch of times in these kind of comedies and these kind of films. And of course, you have it's the underdog story where the team of misfits, including the kicker being a girl, which by the way, they already did that in Necessary Roughness, and it was done better in that. Here it's just some lame Bend It Like Beckham parody with Jizminder Featherfoot, who plays the kicker. And yeah, eventually they go on a win streak and they make it all the way to the toilet bowl. Get it? Haha, it's like a college bowl game, but it's the toilet bowl. And they get to face off against Carl Weathers' team, the Unbeatables. And that's where you find out the whole reason for why Coach Fields was brought out of retirement in the first place. Oh, of course, before that, there was a bit of drama with the team not showing up for practice, and because of the fact that they want to do their coach proud and go out and get drunk and party because their coach wanted them to fail in classes and be party animals because that's what football players do. So they felt like they disappointed the coach before by doing the right thing, studying and not partying. So then they decided to go and party, and they're somehow sober by the start of the game. Of course, the game starts and they're down big, but then they find a way to come back. And then they even do this thing where the coach, he mentioned that he wanted to play again, and so he gets to play again in the final play as a fullback and scores a game-winning touchdown. And he does it by running over his rival and a former friend of his in Freddie, who also suits up. I got serious Married with Children vibes during that moment, by the way, like with Al, with Al Bundy and his Polk High record of scoring 3 touchdowns in a single game. Um, but even that was done better in something like the Longest Yard remake when Burt Reynolds came back out and ran the ball and scored. This was just, oh, he just gets the ball, runs in, plows over Carl Weathers, wins the game. You think, oh, he's going to retire and focus on his family. No, he gets another job offer to coach some basketball team and agrees to do it. It is. This is one of those things where you're like, it's just very, very predictable for the most part. And it's not really that clever of a satire when it comes to satirizing these predictable elements. Except for there's a few moments where it's just random. Like there's a whole bit where the coach gets sent to prison and the warden is Dennis Rodman. And in order for him to escape, he has to beat Dennis Rodman in a game of basketball. And he's just somehow some kind of idiot savant at basketball and then wins. and then through some kind of shenanigan situation, he winds up getting out of the prison because the ball bounces and goes out the prison door, and he just goes and chases after it, gets into a cab, and now he's back coaching the comebacks. Like, okay, all right. But any of the stuff that's trying to be trendy, trying to make references to pop culture at the time, has not aged well at all. Like the whole anything that references iPod, because there's this radio parody with the offensive stereotype of mentally challenged people. Uh, but here he's called iPod instead of radio. And there's even a whole bit where it's like everybody's dancing like it's the iPod ad. There's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be watching this and being like, "What? What is going on? And what is this even referencing?" Um, you have random cameos by different sports figures. Like you have Lawrence Taylor who plays himself, Michael Irvin who plays himself, Eric Dickerson. You have Frank Caliendo doing imitations of famous NFL announcers like John Madden and Pat Summerall. Was it Pat Summerall or was it the other guy? I'm trying to remember exactly. No, I don't think it was Pat Summerall. It was the other guy. It was forgot what his name was. And I've been watching a lot of Al Michaels. So he was doing Al Michaels and John Madden. And you also had some other cameo appearances by different actors, like Andy Dick as the referee of the toilet bowl. Uh, Bradley Cooper, Dax Shepard, John Gries, and Will Arnett as these local hicks who live in the town that the comebacks play in and are making threats to the coach if they don't win. And I got to give Bradley Cooper this. He was pretty funny as this cowboy character who doesn't speak English because he's got so much chew in his mouth and is just honestly sounding a lot like Boomhauer from King of the Hill. But it was fun to see Bradley Cooper play a character like that. Honestly, those characters were some of the funnier characters in the movie, and they should have been in it more. Because a lot of the other football players, like I don't Trotter's joke is one note and gets old really fast. The towel boy, Randy Randinger. It's a really lame attempt to try to be Rudy or Lucas, and it's just lame. This whole joke is that oh he gets to finally go in the game and then he's traumatized because it's funny I guess because the kid experienced trauma. Uh, the whole stuff with the Noreen DeWolf's character Jizminder as the kicker, Asil Tare, um, and him having magic powers after he tears his ACL for some reason. Lance Truman, the quarterback, who's you're getting the hint that he might be a little bisexual, but he has problems with fumbling the ball, and he finds a way to solve his fumbling problem by imagining that he's holding a pair of tits. You know, stuff like that. That's just it is what it is. And like the other, like Buddy Boy, the lineman, who's just really nice unless you piss him off in the most stupid, dumb way, and then he turns into an absolute terror on the field. And it's just a lot of just not really that interesting, not really that funny, and not really that unique character writing. And like I said, a lot of the stuff is just very predictable and cliched. And yes, a lot of these films are like that, but if you're making a parody of those movies, I think you would make more of an effort to try to be a satire of them instead of just doing the same thing, but worse. And it doesn't help either that there's really not a ton of really likable characters. Like Lance Truman, I don't mind. And the coach has his moments, but they're very few and far between. And I like the villain It's crazy. Like, I like the villain the most out of any of the characters in this. Freddie Wiseman, the coach of the Lone Star Unbeatables. And the daughter's all right too, Michelle Fields. Um, but I mean, Jorge Wanson, like the guy who he acts like he's tough, like he's some kind of gangster, but he's actually uh a guy who lives in the suburbs. He's not, you know, a tough gangster at all. He's not from the barrio. He's not from the hood. It's just a lot of stuff where you're just like, just roll your eyes type shit. Really, when it comes to this script, there's a reason why what didn't get a lot of good reviews from critics. Now the cast, I think the cast is a little bit better than the quality of the script and the direction, but not by much. David Koechner, I don't mind him in small doses, but I don't think he's that good of a lead. He doesn't have enough charisma to lead a film, and this film is a prime example of that. He just he's very much a side character actor, and he just doesn't command much of a screen presence. His character is also, for the most part, very paper thin, and he's just not that funny most of the time either. And he's trying really hard, so that definitely doesn't help. Carl Weathers as Freddie Wiseman, I thought he was great. He was fantastic. Carl Weathers, it's always nice to see him. It was nice to see him in this. It was a fun role for him. You could tell that he had fun playing the bad guy too. So I enjoyed it. It's almost like he tapped into a little bit of his Apollo Creed sort of angle, sort of thing that he did in the first Rocky with his performance in this. He played like the opposite of his character in Happy Gilmore as a manipulative Freddie Wiseman. Did a good job with the narration too. Melora Hardin is Barb, fine. It's an okay performance. Matthew Lawrence, I didn't mind him as Lance. He had some charm. Definitely had some charm to him. And I bought him as a quarterback. He definitely looked athletic enough. Brooke Nevin, I liked her attitude. She was also pretty attractive, but she had her own charisma too, which definitely did help her performance. Robert Richard is Asiel Terre. He was fine. He gave me Cuba Gooding Jr. vibes, but it was good for what he was asked to do. Same thing goes for Noreen DeWolf as Gisminder, or Jackie Long as Trotter, or Jesse Garcia as Jorge, or George Back as Buddy Roy, or Martin Spaniers as Randy Randinger. Jermaine Williams though as iPod, like that was awful. That was really bad. But I don't know what else he could really do with that. Andy Dick was a dick as always. I Dennis Rodman, not much of an actor, but he wasn't in the movie that much. Bradley Cooper, Dax Shepard, John Gries, Will Arnett, they stole the film when it comes to any scene that they were in. Lawrence Taylor and Michael Irvin, they had better appearances in other films that they had cameos in. And Eric Dickerson, for instance, he was a lot better in Pros versus Joes. Honestly, I'd rather watch an episode of Pros versus Joes again, or an entire season over the comebacks. By the way, I remember hearing something about that show coming back, and I don't think it's really turned into anything. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything. See, I'd rather talk about Pros versus Joes from Spike TV than talk about the comebacks. That's where we are right now, folks. But seriously, if you like sports, go watch that show sometime. It's a lot of fun. It's a competition show from back in the day where you had these old sports stars and they challenged these average Joes in these competitions. And it's really entertaining, especially when the Joes put the hurt on the Joes put the hurt on the pros, or the pros put the hurt on the Joes. Usually the pros humbling the Joes is the most entertaining best parts of that show, because so many of these shows, man, they were just obnoxious and needed to be put into their place. Um But yeah, Eric Dickerson was actually in an episode of that, and so was Michael Irvin, if I remember correctly. Um, and Michael Irvin was in the Longest Yard remake, and he was a lot better in that than he was in this. But yeah, the cast for what it is, not the worst in the world. I do want to give credit to Mr. Truman, played by Nick Searcy. I think he was definitely one of the better performers. He was the one that did a lot of drag, dressed like Cher, stuff like that. Um, but when it comes to other elements of the film, I mean, cinematography, it's just average, run of the mill, so middle tier stuff that you expect for a comedy like this. The same thing goes for the editing by Alan Edward Bell. And it's like 84 minutes, but it barely makes it to that runtime because there's a lot of padding. There's a lot of stuff that they just stretch out because they have to get it to the 84-minute runtime. And there are some moments where it definitely does drag as a result. Honestly, you can do worse than the comebacks when it comes to sports comedies. There are some moments where you might laugh a few times, but it's still pretty lame and pretty forgettable at the end of the day. You can do a lot better when it comes to sports comedies, specifically football comedies. Go watch Wildcats with Goldie Hawn. Go check out The Replacements with Keanu Reeves. Um, Check out The Best of Times with Kurt Russell and Robin Williams. That one is very underrated. Not enough people talk about that one. Or Necessary Roughness with Scott Bakula. Like, there's a lot of options for sports comedies, specifically football comedies, that are a lot better, a lot more satisfying, a lot more entertaining than the comebacks. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on the film. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.